What is up, everybody? Brian Mendler back in your life on this beautiful Monday morning. And I am super excited today to be joined by my good friend, Yousef Nasouf, Dr. Nasouf, who I haven't seen you in a while, man. It's good to see you. How you been?
Been great, Brian. How have you been?
I'm good. So I actually wanted to talk to you. I know you're out in LA and you're a huge Lakers fan and a huge Kobe fan and haven't gotten to talk to you since the tragedy of Kobe. How you doing with that, man? That must have hit you hard. It hit me hard over here in New York. So how'd that hit you?
It was really tough for me on so many different levels. I remember, I went to UCLA and I used to work at this building called the men's gym building. My job was to make sure all the towels were clean and, give them out, and for the guys that were working out at the gym. And then right upstairs is a basketball gym. And it looks like a regular building, you wouldn't even know it, but all the NBA players work out there in the summer, and they still do now. So I remember meeting Kobe. I was about 22 years old. I was a senior. He was an 18-year-old, rookie coming in. Just remember talking to him, meeting Shaq. Magic was there all the time and all those guys. And then literally just watching him, his whole career, I'm 22, he's 18. So I watched the whole 20 years, saw all the ups and downs like everybody else. And then you just feel like, you connected with him and you know him. And you know, actually, my I go to a couple Laker games a year as well, right? And I went
Yeah.
on December 29th, and him and his daughter were at that game, and they showed him on the jumbotron, and everybody's yelling. And I was thinking about Kobe and how I connected to Kobe, and everybody has a different connection to Kobe, right? But what I always loved about Kobe was, my personality is I'm relentless, and in our society, a lot of times that's not a trait that a lot of people value because, they see you as pushing through things and pounding through things and things like that. But I loved Kobe because I felt like he made me feel, if you want to say quote unquote normal, because he was relentless, So
Yeah.
here was a guy, and I'm not comparing myself to him, but here was a guy that he was relentless at his craft. So when I was being relentless at my craft, while maybe society and our profession was telling me, hey, slow down, too much of this, too much of that, Kobe was like, no, Mamba mentality. We're going to attack this full speed. We're going to do the best we can. So I was doing that, my own version of it in the educational field.
Yeah.
And that's really what I loved about Kobe. And then, as a final thought, what I love about Kobe is all the stories you're hearing now about relationships. The person that had cancer that he called it, out of the blue, the person that their mother died and he sent him flowers. And these were writers that sometimes were writing critical articles
Yeah.
about him, right? So that's a final piece that I really love about Kobe, his connection with people. And you can see, right, the whole world, the whole country, the entire state of California is really shook, right?
Yeah.
And this is somebody that transcended basketball. It was a lot more than that. So it was just an incredible, incredible person to watch, and just an honor to see him in person, and just to observe him for over, the last 20 years. And finally, what he's been doing with girls basketball and his daughter, and really uplifting and supporting his family. So just a tragic loss, and it's been tough for all of us to process, really.
Did did you say you actually met him?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I several times at UCLA, and I used to watch them all summer, play, and all the NBA guys. They still do it to this day. They still work out there at UCLA.
That's pretty cool. Wow. I hear you, man. Well, listen, I'm sorry for that, and it's been a tough loss for everybody. I actually was listening to a podcast the other day. I don't know if you know who Lewis Howes is. So Lewis Howes is a pretty famous Instagrammer, and he does a podcast called The School of Greatness, and he brings on really great inspirational, motivational people. And he did an interview with Kobe about a year ago, and he replayed it after Kobe's death, and
Mm.
I listened to it for the first time. I had never listened to it, and it was fascinating. But one of the most fascinating parts of the interview was at the end of the interview, they're talking about Kobe's mentality, and he's talking about just being great and pushing through obstacles, and nothing can stop you. And one of the analogies that he uses, which is kind of freaky, is he says, my mentality is I don't care how rough the waters are, you bring the ship in anyway. And, part of me was thinking, man, that helicopter going in the fog. And I wonder, again, who knows what happened, right? Nobody knows what happened, but that mentality of getting things done and getting where I have to go. And, I wonder if sometimes in life that can be a detriment. What do you think?
I absolutely think it can, and I've seen it, play out in my own life, right? So I think I always think there's pros and cons to everything, and sometimes being relentless and pushing through is really, really powerful, and sometimes, it's not. Like sometimes I've had situations and then even jobs where, something in your gut tells you this is not the right setup, this is maybe not the right job, but then your mentality is let's push through, where sometimes you would have been off being at a different job where you can serve differently, or you could have, if you're using one strategy at work, maybe you needed to shift course. So I definitely think, like everything in life, there's some good to that trait, but
Yeah.
sometimes it becomes overly concentrated and you need to pull back and reevaluate, what you're doing. So I
So
can
I
see
see
both
you.
sides of it.
Yeah, so I see you sitting there in that chair, and I love the glasses, and you got the ball. I mean, we actually, if I'm right now wearing a hat, obviously, and people can watch us now on YouTube, which is really cool. All of these episodes are now being broadcast on my YouTube channel. But so where are you right now? Where are you at home? Are you at work? What are you doing? Because last I knew, you were principal of Nogales High School outside of LA, which is a big high school. Yeah, and you're not doing that anymore. So what are you doing?
So actually, I'm at home right now, so it's a little early in the morning. So we're recording this 5 in the morning. But yeah, I'm working at a school district, Saddleback Valley Unified School District, and I'm the director of human resources there. So I served as a principal for 8 years, 3 years at a junior high, and then 5 years, as you said, at Nogales High School. And most recently, I wanted to make a change. So I've, started a position. I really, really wanted to grow and do something that I was very uncomfortable with and didn't know much about. So I didn't know anything about working in a district office. I didn't know too much about human resources. So this year has been an incredible year of growth for me, and I just been learning a lot, going to professional development, all the things that you talk about, and you train teachers on how to work with students and support students. And then a lot of the trainings I go to, there are lawyers there are retired
Hmm.
human resources people and so on, and they provide us with great training so we can support all of the instruction and all that takes place on all the campuses, and all the principals that do their jobs every single day. So we do a lot of things. We recruit, we hire, we support the principals, we support the teachers, the counselors, all the staff. And we just make sure the district is fully staffed and has all the right people to give every kid a first class educational experience. So it's been a different journey, but I'm loving the growth and all the different opportunities.
Usually when people come on my show, I don't know that much about them. I don't go out of my way to find out about people before the show because this is where I want to get to know people. But obviously, I've known you now for probably a good, what, 5 years or so? How long?
Yeah,
When did we first
yeah.
meet?
It's funny. We first met in Las Vegas, right? It was you were doing a discipline conference, and when it's funny when you go to conferences, right? You go to the breakout, the big sessions, and then the breakout sessions. And a lot of breakout sessions sometimes are smaller and so on. And I'll never forget your first session. You probably don't remember the story, but I, you were doing several sessions over the days, right? So I go to the first one, and it was, and I don't want to put you down, but it was like half full, right? But like usual, I mean, you can have two people in your session, and you're gonna bring the heat, right? So you're bringing the heat. It was, about half full, and I've never done this before, and I can tell you, I take teachers at conferences all the time, and I always just allow them to go to whatever breakout sessions they go, right? So when I saw yours, what I did was I went to every teacher we have and I said, listen, I don't care which session you're planning to go to, you got to go see this guy, Brian Mendler, at this next session. And they were like, oh, okay, no problem. So I gathered, and we had about 10 of them at the conference. So we gathered together, we went to your next conference. Well, guess what? I bet all the other principals did the same thing because you couldn't even sit at the next session, right?
What happened?
It was packed. So from there on, I think I went up to you at the end of the session, and I think I told you something like, I've been to a lot of conferences, and this was one of the best sessions that I've seen. And then we just started talking. I think we ran into each other at the pool later on.
Yeah.
We connected from there and then exchanged phone numbers. And then you came out to our school, did a few things. And it's just been a great relationship. What I've always loved about you is, everything you're doing at the core is you just want kids to have really good experiences. And that's really at my heart as well.
Right.
So I think we connected deep on that level, and we've just carried on a friendship. We text once in a while, make phone calls, and we had dinner a few times. So I think that's how our story sort of got going and evolved.
You know what's crazy about that is that what happened there with you has actually been a detriment to me in my career because now I don't know if you know this, but I actually have not been invited back to multiple conferences because of that. And I know this is going to sound arrogant and it's going to sound cocky to people that are listening, but I have been told that I take too many people away from the other sessions. And literally, like if I'm there, and so that conference, discipline conference, they're not bringing me back this year. I've been at that conference for 12 straight years, and you know this because you've been there. I dominate at that place. And I'm not trying to say that rudely, but that is up my alley. I am a disciplined guy, and it's unbelievable to me. It's sad. It's actually I've been upset about this because this is going to be the first year this year that I'm not going back, which is fine, but it's that happens frequently where and look, my goal when I'm doing a presentation at a conference is to dominate. My goal is for people to come in and remember me, like you are going to remember me when it's over. And that's my mentality, and I think that's the mentality that all teachers should take in all situations, right? When you're in front of a room, be phenomenal, like be phenomenal. And I one of the things I can't stand about most conferences is the way the submission process works. I don't know if you're aware of kind of how the whole thing works, but basically, when you go to a conference, you submit like a written proposal, right? And so there's a lot of people who are really good at submitting written proposals. That doesn't mean that they know how to be a presenter in front of hundreds of people. Just because you can write a really good proposal doesn't make you excellent at the craft of delivering that proposal to people. And it's what's amazing to me is that none of the big conferences do video proposals. Every one of them should. The conference proposal should be submit your video. I want to see your presentation in front of people so that we know what we're getting ourselves into. None of them do that. And it's unbelievable to me that none of them do that. And that's why people go to conferences and there's so many bad sessions because these people are great at writing a proposal. They're good at that, but these are two totally different skills. And I've gotten hurt in my career because I stink at writing proposals. I'm not a good proposal writer. I'm not a good in general writer. I'm a way better talker than I am anything else in my life. And the fact that you don't get to do that to submit at a conference is amazing to me. And someday, if I ever do my own conferences, they will be video submissions. And all you conference people listening to me out there, video submissions for people. If they don't want to submit a regular proposal, just let them do their video. Let them, well, I should be able to say to people right now for a conference, go on my Instagram page and look at the reviews that I get. And that should be enough. That's, in my opinion, that should be enough. It's often not, but what are you going to do? So anyway, the reason I got into that was your story is an amazing one. You are the true, when they say definition of American dream, you're really it. You grew up in this country, but I remember you telling me the story, so I'll tell it a little bit and then I'll let you kind of take it over. So tell me if I'm wrong. In a basically a 2-bedroom apartment with 8 brothers and sisters, correct?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So we immigrated from Libya. We were, born in Libya and came to America in 1986. Couldn't speak a word of English, and I still remember going to Thrifties and trying to buy something at Thrifties, and I don't know what it was, and $2 or whatever. So I had my $2 ready to go, and I'm ready to pay, and she's, like $2.15. I said, no, it says $2. So I'm having this, and I can barely speak English. I'm having this whole fight. And she goes, no, tax, tax, tax. So just little stories like that. We didn't have tax, so we got tax over here. So just things like that. But we eventually settled in Torrance, California, and it was 8 of us in a 2-bedroom, apartment for over 15 years. And I remember I have 2 sisters and 3 brothers, so 4 boys. And in the living room, we had four beds. The 2 at the top and 2 you pulled on the bottom, and that was our room. And we went through poverty. It was really tough. We were on, I don't know, every social program you can think of, Section 8, welfare. free and reduced lunch. You name all the different programs out there. And I'm really thankful that so many people and the different programs supported us because I wouldn't be here today. So I know a lot of times people bash those programs and they'll find the one person that used it to buy liquor, and then now the whole program is bad and we need to throw it away, and all these bad immigrants and so on. But there are a lot of people that benefit through those programs and they're trying to do the right thing. And I like to say, all the taxes that my wife and I pay now, I think have made up for
It's well
some of
worth
those
it.
benefits that we received in the past. So I think we're doing our fair share to contribute to society. But it was, it was tough growing up here. When we immigrated, the diversity levels were not where they are now. Minorities all over the place now, from Southeast Asia, from Africa, from Europe, from Mexico, from South America, and so on. So I think it's a little bit easier. I'm not going to say it's easy. It's a little bit easier to be an immigrant these days. But when we were there, especially for people from the Middle East, I mean, we were the only kids in the whole school that were Arabic. Like we couldn't, there's no other people to speak to, and so on. And then you face all the racial teasing and being called a camel jockey, and why is your mom wearing that thing on her head, and all these different components that. And when you're a kid, and you talk about this, right? I think a lot of times you just want to be normal,
Hmm.
right? And then so when you stand out and then kids are mentioning it to you and they're making fun of you and so on, and the whole bullying thing that we have now and the sensitivity to it, it didn't really exist, at least for me when I was going through it. Kids were just brutal. I mean, they were pretty tough. But like I said earlier about the whole situation about character traits, and some things are positive and negative. I don't want to make the whole thing sound all negative, because it wasn't.
Sure.
A lot of it was really positive. It gave me a work ethic I probably wouldn't normally have. It helped me to persevere, helped me to be relentless. And it really made my brothers and I and my sisters and our whole family kind of closer, because you're kind of in this foxhole together going through this experience. And, as a final note, so many people, and this is why I love what I do and my heart is to help other people. While we were going through this journey, so many people helped us. I had friends that helped us, families that helped us. So many people opened up doors. So I know a lot of times we try to present this narrative that everybody's out for themselves and people don't care. That just hasn't been my experience. I wouldn't even be here today if all these people were not going out of their way to help us in so many different ways. So that's why it's always in my heart to try to help people. So it was a tough experience, but I know it sounds weird. I wouldn't change it. I'm glad I went through it. And, now it's just my goal to support others as they're navigating through that or whatever they're going through, and just, help them to be successful. So it's tough, but, here we are today.
So your parents came over from Libya. Were they born in Libya? And when they got here, what did they do?
Yeah, so they were born there, and I was born there as well.
You were born there. I
So
didn't know that.
yeah, four of us were born there, and then one of my brothers was born in Saudi Arabia, and one was born here in America. So when they came, my dad's trained as a lawyer, and my mom was a teacher in Libya, right? So when they came here, obviously because these degrees don't transfer, they couldn't do those jobs here. So basically, they worked various jobs like immigrants do. So you take whatever job you can, and a lot of times those jobs did not pay to the level that you need to support six kids, right? So you have to take on part-time job, and now the minimum wage is going up and up, 13, 14, $15 an hour. Back then, you're talking about $3, $4 an hour. So when you're making that type of an income on with six kids to support and rent and all those various components, it doesn't really go far. So that's what my parents did, and they did the best they could with the opportunities they had. And a lot of it, we ended up working part-time jobs. I remember starting even at the age of 13 delivering newspapers, and I didn't do just one newspaper route. I did two of them. And then I used to
Mhm.
work at this swap meet in Torrance. It was called the Rhodium Swap Meet. My mom would drop me off at 6 o'clock in the morning, Saturdays and Sundays, and she'd pick me up about 3, 4 o'clock. and I worked with this guy that was selling. That's how I started loving shoes. And I have my love for Nikes
I know.
and
Me too.
Jordans and so on. But I used to help this guy
I
sell,
got
shoes.
My LeBrons on right now.
there,
See it?
there, there you go. So I did that, and I think
So
that helped me. Go ahead.
wait. So you started loving shoes when you worked at the swap meet?
It was absolutely.
So tell me
That's
about that. So how does that happen? So you're selling shoes, going, wow, this is really cool.
I think it was a combination of that and my love for basketball. I just love basketball. And what's funny is, while I started this process, right, this is when all those Jordans and all those shoes started coming out, right? So I remember getting a pair of Jordans, on sale, like I think it was like Big Five or whatever it was for like 15 or $20. I kid you not, right? And these are original first edition. And then I had over the years, I ended up working at a place called the Athlete's Foot and various places, Foot Locker and so on at the mall.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah, so I ended up, when we were selling these shoes, they'd go on sale. Nobody wanted them, right? There was no sneakerhead industry and all this stuff. So what was funny is I collected all these shoes, Brian, and I probably had about 30 of them, and they were all first edition, brand new in boxes, right? So when I got married, I said, I don't want to take all these with me. So I just gave them to all my brothers. Said, you guys can have them. So I thought they'd keep them nice and whatever. They started wearing them to the park to play basketball.
Oh no.
And all those shoes are, now you can see them. They're now people fight over them. You can't even buy them. And these are first editions that you could probably sell for hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. So ever since then, I've been a big fan of shoes. I still buy them now and wear them periodically. And when I was a principal, the kids loved it, and it was a great way to connect with kids,
Yeah.
right? Because they'd say, "Oh, Dr. Nasouf, your shoe game is tight. Your shoe game is sick." And then you just kind of give them a fist pump, and it's just a good way to start having a conversation with a kid because they're interested in my shoes.
Yeah.
So my love of shoes is it's been pretty long and it's pretty deep as well.
Might as well. I worked at my first ever job was at Dick's Sporting Goods. So I worked at Dick's Sporting Goods. You know what Dick's Sporting Goods, right?
Oh
At
yeah,
Dick's.
yeah.
So when I worked, Dick's Sporting Goods originally started 2 hours from my home in a place called Binghamton, New York. It was originally a fishing and tackle store, this little plaza, basically in a strip mall, and it's blown up to what it is today. But I worked at Dick's when there were four stores total. And I
Wow.
was in the footwear department, and it was the best. I love to this day, it was probably my favorite job. I mean, I couldn't wait to go to work because people would just come in and I would just talk about sneakers and look at
Yeah.
sneakers. And I was so obsessed. But I learned how to work too, which was really cool. I've always worked though, from the time I was little. And look, I didn't grow up in poverty and with a tough home life, but my parents instilled that you go to work and if you want something, you got to buy it yourself and you got to earn it. And that's been a huge part of my life. So that's been a huge part of your life as well. I know your parents instilled that in you. Are you worried about your children? Because I don't know, man. You kind of hook them up. You got a sick pool and a nice house. Like I do with my kids because I'm like, oh, this summer at one point, my kids, we have a pool at our new house here, and then we belong to a club that has a pool. So it was like my kids were complaining about which pool they were going to go to, and I'm like, you know what? This is like bad problems that I'm dealing with in my life.
Yeah. It's an interesting topic, right? My wife and I we talk about this frequently, right? So I've come to the conclusion that number one, I don't think it's fair for me to expect my kids to kind of have the same type of thinking that I have because they didn't endure what I had, right? So I think as a starting point, I had to run my race, they have to run their race, right? The fact of the matter is they're not living in poverty, so their outlook is just going to be different. I remember watching, Kevin Hart has a pretty good documentary on Netflix right now, right? And one of the episodes, he was kind of making a joke of it. He said he gathered all his kids and he grew up in a tough environment in Philadelphia, right? So he took gathered all the kids and he thought he was going to take them over there and he was going to show them, this, tough place that he grew up in. And they were going to kind of have this, oh my God, Dad, we really appreciate what you've done. And look how you grew up and all these things, right? And instead of that, they were looking at this place and they're like, wow, this is cool, I want to live here. Yeah. And these kids are living like in a mansion, right? He goes, oh
Right.
my god, they got the wrong message, the whole thing. So but I think the point is,
Interesting.
you know he thought the way he was thinking about it, his kids were going to think about it the same way. So I think for me, the lesson is what I thought about it and what I went through, it's not going to be the same for my kids. So I think I have to approach it differently. So that's a starting point. I think the next thing is I really believe you can instill hard work, being a good person, treating others the right way, perseverance, all those things. I don't think you have to grow up in poverty to have those. There are many people that have great traits that are doing a lot of great things in the world that didn't grow up in poverty, right? So I really think, my kids will, have, gotten some of the positive messages. And, my wife and I, we do our best to provide all these, structures and conversations. And they're going to find their way. I really think it's how, you develop them with relationships, instill all
Totally.
those lessons, and, they're going to get there. So we do worry about it.
Yeah.
And once in a while, I talk about kind of, creating artificial struggles, right? So sometimes as an example, right, they come home, well, I don't want this teacher, and I want this teacher, and so on. And your first instinct is to do what? You want to, show up and then you want to fix it, right? But then I think a lot of times I just let them kind of go through it. I'm there to help, I'm there to listen, but I'm not going to always kind of rescue, because struggle is a very important part of life. And if you remove all struggle, you see this at schools, right? Anytime somebody says something to a kid, sometimes the parents want to be right there to solve everything. And I've had this conversation with many parents. I said, listen, don't allow any of your kids to be abused or given a really terrible time, but allowing them to go to struggle periodically is not going to be the end of the world. Obviously, I'm not talking about anything extreme or anything like that,
Yeah. Yeah.
but just, well, I don't like this teacher, or I don't like the style that they teach, and so on. Well, what are we going to do when you don't have a boss that you don't like, or the style of your boss? We're just going to quit the job. We're going to have your parent, come to the job to try to, work on your behalf or talk on your behalf. So I think we got to find that balance, and I try to do that with my kids, supporting them, but at the same time allowing them to navigate struggles so they can experience life.
It's the same. I think it's the same with administrator to teacher, right? I think sometimes teachers struggle with certain kids, and I think it's healthy a lot of times for teachers to go through it. And I tell them that, especially newer teachers, younger teachers, I'll say to them, look, like for yesterday, I actually did a webinar with a bunch of first and second year teachers, and they're struggling, and I get it. And I said, the good news for you guys is this is going to make you better. Like, it makes you better. And it's normal to struggle in your first and second year. It is normal. In fact, if you don't struggle, you should feel in your first year like you want to quit multiple times. If you don't feel like that, you're doing something wrong, I believe. So it's okay to feel that way. It's overwhelming, it's exhausting. But I think sometimes going through that in general is healthy. And like, I know it's a cliche, but what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And it does. Like, it makes you stronger to go through struggle. And I firmly believe that, no question. You have two kids, correct?
I have two, yeah. My
And what
son's
grades?
So my son's in eighth grade and my daughter's in the sixth grade.
Both
So
good
we're
students? They both do well in school? Any struggles for either one of them?
no, they we've been very blessed, and I have to give all the credit to my wife. She does a lot of the
Obviously.
work, and my son, I think, initially struggled, when he was younger.
They got their
But my
looks. They got their looks from your wife too, for sure. There's
Absolutely,
no
hey,
question about that.
no,
You hit a
no.
home run.
Well, I'm very lucky, man, in many ways. So, but yeah, I think my son struggled initially, and my daughter, she's always been, really good at school. But now, I think they do their best, and really, my goal for them is for them to be the best versions of themselves. I don't go for this whole society where they have to get this grade or that grade. For me, if they are working at their capacity and they're trying their best effort, I'm 100%, happy with that. And then if that means all B's, then that's what it is. If it's all A's, then that's what it is. If whatever, and even, my son plays basketball. In the beginning, he wasn't the best, and then he started improving, and he's middle of the road, and then he became one of the better players on the team. And it doesn't matter to me what level he was at. to me, he was successful all the way through because he was trying his best and he was going to practice and he was trying at the games and he was, when he wasn't playing, he had a good attitude and he was giving other kids a high five and he was being positive. So to me, you just do your best. And my daughter has her dance, recitals and all those things. And same thing, she does her best and really enjoys that and is growing in that process. So I
Yeah.
think at the end of the day, my wife and I always talk about, it's kind of like when that time comes and you put them, out there in the world and they start flying, like, you see the birds when they start flying into the wilderness and so on. You just want to feel as a parent that you did your best to provide all the foundational aspects you can so they can be successful contributors, to the world. So,
Yeah.
and if you can do that, to me, that's the ultimate success. When your kids are successful, that means you've contributed the right way to society, and I can feel really good about that.
I don't know if you hear, can you hear that phone ringing in the background here? So I'm in this studio that I have, and there's a phone over here that I disconnect every time. And of course, the one time I forgot to disconnect it, it's
It's
rang
Saturday.
three times. Three times it's rang. This is how it works. What
I
about
think
you?
it's
When
it's that discipline conference, man. I think they're trying to get you back.
they heard. I'm not going this year.
Uh,
So what about you? When you were in school, were you a good student? I know you've got your doctorate now from USC, and they give everybody a degree, obviously. No, I'm just kidding. But
yeah,
so what? As a kid, did you? I know you're not only did you grow up in a family of eight, but it wasn't always the easiest at home, correct?
yeah.
So how did you
No,
do in school, and take me through that?
no, I was always, and I don't want to sound arrogant, but school always came easy to me. My thinking was always pretty clear. Nothing was really hard for me. But I think there was a couple things that played into place, right? Number one, I was bored at school, and I didn't feel challenged a lot of times. And number two, when you live in the environment you live in, you're trying to. I didn't really care about getting A's and B's. I wanted to see what, if we're gonna have the next meal. And sometimes Brian, our meals consisted of, sometimes my mom would go to Albertsons, would buy the bread that was about to expire that they put on sale, buy a bunch of tomatoes, cucumbers, onions, and she would mash it all up, and she would put olive oil on there, salt, and mash it all up, and put in a metal tin, and all of us would sit there, six kids sit there, and you'd eat it as quick as you can because there's no leftovers. And it's really funny. I ended up eating fast my whole life because, if you didn't eat fast where I lived, you weren't gonna eat. There were no
Mhm.
leftovers. So even I remember when I was met my wife and we'd go to dinner and we'd eat, and I'd finish mine super fast. She said, "Well, why are you eating so fast?" And I didn't know I was eating so fast. I just got used to it that way. But back to my point, when you're in that environment, you don't have time for homework. There's not a place for homework. I didn't have tutors and so on. So when I went to junior high and high school, it was really interesting. My dad kept some of my state testing and all those things. And I have some results in math that I'm in 97th, 98th percentile one year, right? So that year, I guess I cared and I took the test seriously. And then another year, I'm at the 50 percentile. So I must have been just guessing that year, right? Because you don't go from 97th percentile, 98, to 50% and so on.
Mhm.
So I would describe my experience in junior high and high school. I was never a troublemaker. I never got a referral or anything like that. But I was pretty much a C average student. If I felt like it, I'd get an A. If I was bored, I'd get a C, and I just got through it and graduated. And back then, nobody spoke to me about scholarships or anything like that. And part of it is because, I said, well, why am I going to be working hard? I'm probably the best I can do is go to community college because we couldn't afford it, right? I didn't know there was all these scholarships for minorities, for people in poverty, and so on. So what happened was then that was, what took place. And then I went to El Camino College, and then I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. So I was kind of get C's and B's, and then once I really, really figured out what I wanted to do, I got nothing but A's, and
Mhm.
my GPA really improved. I applied and was accepted to UCLA, and UCLA got all A's and B's and did really well. Graduated, with good
Yeah.
grades, and then I went on to get my teaching credentials, my master's, my doctorate, and I did
What did
really
you
well.
What did you teach?
I was a special education teacher for 7 years. Yeah, so I started off, self-contained classes, and then I did, they call it now like the push-in model.
Yep.
We call it collaboration, but I was doing that with a buddy of mine, Dennis, at La Mirada High School in about 1999, 2000. That was way early on when hardly anybody was doing that. I mean, we were getting resistance from all over the place. But, I ended up team teaching in an English class and then also working with students in a, pull in way and then a push out model as well. So, and that's why I think a lot of the things that you talk about really resonated with me because all the kids that you describe, uh, I've had those kids at some point or another in my classes, and all the strategies you talked about. I've kind of gone through, and some of them it's like trial and error, right? Like,
Yeah.
I would do different strategies. I never thought I was a genius, but I was like, well, it was really instinctive for me. Like, I never wrote referrals because it never made any sense to me, right? I
Right.
was always trying to figure out like how can I support this person, and I like when you talk about, and I don't know how to say it, I'm gonna mess it up,
That's
how
all right.
you don't allow the curriculum to get in the way of the kid. You'll throw out the curriculum first and then get
Yeah.
to the kid. I used to do that all the time.
Right.
Sometimes a kid would have a hard time. I literally, Brian, would stop the class and go, "Hey, buddy, hey, let's go outside and chat a little bit." And I'd go outside, and same thing, kind of like you teach. I wouldn't even talk about what they were doing. I would just say, "Hey, what's going on, man? You seem to be having kind of like a rough day, man. Everything all right?" "Oh yeah, I don't want to do this, And then they start cursing. I say, "Hey, no problem, man. But hey, can you help me out, man? Could you just do me one huge favor?" "Well, what's that?" "Hey, I know you're not interested today, and it's not a problem. Can you just like sit in the back, and if you want, do whatever you want. You want to take a quick little nap, if you want to, look at the magazine you have, whatever it is, because I really worked really hard, and some of the other kids are kind of interested. So if you just allow me today, let me kind of work with them so we can kind of get through this a little bit. And then if you want to take a break today," and I say, "You know what? No, no, no. I want to be a part of the lesson too. Hey, let's go inside, and I want to be a part." And they would come in, and they would be fine, but I never told them what they needed to do,
Right.
what they're doing is wrong, and all this other stuff. So I always had a connection with kids, from that perspective. And I never thought I was a genius or anything like that. I just didn't think me yelling at them was going to accomplish anything,
Yeah.
and kids really appreciated that you were kind of, I think a lot of these kids, they don't want to be pushed in a corner, and especially not in front of all their buddies. I used to call that showtime. If you're gonna give a kid like that an audience, and it's just gonna be showtime, and you're not gonna win because they can say a whole bunch of things you're never gonna be able to say, so
That's
they
right. And
got
they
you
got
beat.
all day. They got all day. I
Exactly.
mean, that's the thing. They got all day and they can say whatever they want and you can't. So
Yeah.
you're immediate. It's like the house in the casino. You can't beat it. You can't
No.
beat it. So you just
No.
gotta play your hand properly. And the actual line that I use is, do you kick out the kid because they got in the way of your content, or do you kick out the
Exactly.
content because it's in the way of the kid?
Yeah.
And again, like, I don't think that one, and I talked about this a few weeks ago. I don't think that one, it has to be one or the other. I don't think it has to be, but
No.
I think sometimes as a teacher you're kind of pushed in that direction, and it's either, do I talk to this kid about their life and about what's going on and about what's happening, or do I push through this math that really nobody's paying attention to? And I love that approach of pulling a kid as there's so many things you said, pulling them aside privately, right? Private in general is better than public, I believe, with challenging kids. Getting in their ear, not making demands, right? No demands. Hey, buddy, just whatever. Like, if you just want to sit in the back and just do me a favor though. Like, I'm going to do you a favor. So could you do me a favor? Like, that kind of approach, so much more beneficial with challenging kids than sit down and do what you're told. And if you don't, here's what's going to happen to you. And I always felt like, I always, the problem with referrals for me was, I always felt, when as a kid, anytime a teacher would write me up, it would be like them sending that message to me, like, I can't handle you myself. I need mommy to help. And it's like, good mommies, they don't ever say, you wait till daddy gets home, he'll then you'll be in trouble. Good mommies say, I don't care if daddy ever comes home, sit your butt down now and eat your dinner. And like, they're not playing around. And I feel like that's the same approach as a teacher. The thought process is, I'm going to keep you here. And look, I get it. I get that some of these kids can get in the way of the learning of a lot of the other kids. But again, that question goes back to, well, then what are you there to teach? Right. And for me, I was always there to teach people. I was never there to teach product. And for me, math, science, ELA, social studies, those are all the products, right? It's like you're a sales rep and you have these products, but great sales reps, no, I don't sell my product, I sell my customer, right? I look at my customer, I figure out what interests them. What do they like? What makes them tick? And then how do I design my product to fit them, right? How do I show you how my product's in the best interest for you? And I feel like that approach in general, not just with kids and special ed, but in general in life, is a better approach. And I'm guessing you could tell me this because I was never an administrator. As an administrator, it's probably a better approach with teachers too, correct?
Yeah, it all comes to down to relationships and how you interact with people. And I, the phrase I always use, and it's a common phrase, right? You can't beat anybody into performing, whether it's a kid, a teacher, your spouse. I don't care who it is. You're just not going to beat somebody into performance. And I think that discipline stuff that you were just mentioning right now is a when you're doing referrals and all those, you're beating somebody into performance. It might work short term,
Yeah.
but it's not the long term solution. So the same thing also, exists with teachers. A lot of times when they're talking to you, I've noticed for me, anyways, sometimes they're not even looking for a solution. They just want somebody to listen, to hear them out. And it's not about, when they come in, here's an issue, and then I'm supposed to listen and give them, method A, B, and C to solve it. Sometimes it's just a matter of listening, maybe sharing a few perspectives that you have, but ultimately, I think they know in their heart, what to do, and they just want to know that you're in their corner, you're there to support them, and so on. So, a lot of our teachers, I think a lot of times our teachers get unfairly attacked. But I really believe, especially the teachers, I can speak on the ones I've worked with, a lot of them are just amazing people that are really starting to make incredible growth in these areas that you about relationships and working with kids. And really, I think the examples of the teachers, the kid with referrals all day long and things like that. I think I hardly have saw has seen that, especially at the tail end of my being a principal. Maybe in the beginning part, you saw more of that, but I think people have really started to move in the right direction, which makes me really, really hopeful. I think we're starting to figure out the right methods. We're implementing those methods, and I think I'm very encouraged. And even the whole thing with the content and things like that, I've seen teachers make drastic adjustments now, where when they know a kid is struggling and they need something alternative, they go out of their way to support them, and they work with them, and it makes me feel really good. And when I see those examples, it just brings a smile to my heart, because I see that people are getting it, and they're making the adjustments that they need to really impact kids. And think about the relationship part, right? Most people don't remember their math lesson, the math test, the English part, and all those things are great, great things, right? But the reality is, people remember relationships. In my opinion, and this is just my humble opinion, the main thing from school is this, right? Learning how to think, and producing great citizens that know how to cultivate relationships and how to navigate the interpersonal relationships in the world. To me, those are like the goals, right?
Mhm.
It's not to memorize a bunch of facts, because what are we all walking around with in our pockets? We all have these computers in our pockets, cell phones, right? That I can hit a button on there and find out any fact I want to find, right? So our value as educators is not going to be disseminators of information. That's way past. Maybe that model worked 50 years ago, where I couldn't access all this information. So I had to put it all in textbook, and then it was all brought to the schoolhouse, and I was going to share it with the students in
Right,
front of me. Well, now information is everywhere.
right.
I can find out whatever I want. So I think our value is, how do we take that information? How do we get students to analyze it, to use critical thinking skills, to have those dynamic conversations, so they can improve and grow within their thinking and reasoning, while at the same time cultivating relationships, how to treat others, how to be kind, how to be compassionate. And I think the schools and the educators that are figuring out this part, I think they're the ones that are creating tremendous value
Yeah.
for their kids, for their families, and for the communities that they live in. And I'm encouraged because I'm seeing a lot of this and a lot of what we do in education moving towards this, dynamic where we're bringing incredible value to the lives of a lot of students.
And it's to me, it's the most important thing. I mean, it's the stuff that I use every day. No question in my life. I mean, my life revolves around relationships and having them with people and connecting, with as many people as I can. And I love the fact that I get to do that. And I've always been good at that. That's the thing. Like even when I was a kid, I've always been good at connecting and at reading people and at figuring people out. And I never felt like those skills were really valued as a student. Like as a student, it was, can you memorize the causes of the Civil War, or can you tell me the elements on the periodic table? And again, I'm not saying those things are important, but if you look at society now and where we've come to, I don't need to know any of those things by heart ever. And if I ever need to know any of those things, I can find them in literally 2 seconds on my phone. And even with my own kids, the technology is such a tough thing as a parent to navigate, because the truth is it teaches my kids better than I can. I mean, I see the stuff that my son is doing on the iPad, and I mean, he's doing stuff I don't. He's 8 years old, and I don't know what even literally this morning he came in my room. He said, "Dad, I made a movie of the habits of mind." So I don't know if you've heard of Habits of Mind. It's
Yeah.
basically, have you heard of Habits of Mind? So
Uh-huh.
it's interesting, and my son's going through that right now in school, and they're really studying that and teaching the kids. And he created this entire iMovie on Habits of Mind on his iPad, and he did it this morning. And literally gets 20 minutes on the iPad in the morning after he's all ready for school, and he did this in 20 minutes, and he brought it to me, and he's like, "Dad, look at what I did." And I just looked, and I'm like, here I am a lot of the time saying, "Get off the iPad, or you're not going to be on the iPad." Yet then I look at what he's creating on the iPad, and I'm like, I don't know how to do this. He's literally teaching me stuff right now. So it's such a tough slope as a parent. I feel like, you ever feel that way with your kids?
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of times, it feels like the times are passing you by, right? But that's the beauty of having kids and then also working with kids all the time, right? So you can evolve and I don't want to have the times pass me by, but absolutely, you feel sometimes you have deficits in different areas, but I think the great example you bring with your son too is, look, his teacher could have just went over what the habits of mind are. They could have done a worksheet on it or written, a short paragraph or whatever it might have been. But you know what? The beauty of it is exactly kind of what I was saying. Your son now is creating a movie, and a lot of critical thinking and a lot of planning and a lot of different analysis, went into that. And again, it's not about even now. I would go a step further. Sometimes now people are saying it's not even always about the degrees, right? I saw yesterday Elon Musk, obviously he CEO of Tesla and SpaceX and does all these things that they do. He's looking for people who understand AI intelligence, and he said I don't even care if you graduated from high school. If
Right.
you can come and help us, I want you to help us. And again, nobody's advocating that school is not the appropriate venue, but I think the point is that it's not always about information. It's about those critical, skills that you need to add value to an organization, to a school, to a business. And if you can add value to Tesla and Elon Musk, apparently for him, he doesn't care that you had formal schooling. So I think we have to continue to figure out how to evolve and teach our kids how they can create value in their world, in the society that's quickly evolving right in front of them and then right in front of you and I, right? And then we need to catch up as well. So
It's it, you know
it's
it's
exciting.
it's interesting that you say that, though, because I think even still today, this formal schooling is really what most people look at and see. And I look at myself again, when people sometimes the criticism that I'll get is, "Oh, you're not in the classroom anymore. You're not full time in the classroom, quote unquote. What can you know, or what do you know?" And my thought is always, yeah, but this is you're going to be like my 45th podcast episode. That's 45 hours I get to spend one on one talking to the brightest, best minds in education, right? So does that not count? Like, do I have to be paying thousands of dollars to a university, getting one person's often opinion who's standing in the front of the room that they've decided. So they've decided this is this person who's the most knowledgeable one. You're going to pay me thousands and thousands of dollars to sit and listen to their opinion. And so I just think as long as people continue to grow and learn, and I love that the phrase, I don't know exactly when it started, but growth mindset, that
Mhm.
thought process of growth mindset, and whoever kind of made that a thing, that's to me what it's all about. It's all about growth mindset in whatever you're doing in life, whether it's, at my frozen yogurt stores, whether it's a kid wiping the table and doing it at the top level that they possibly can, like do it right, because some kids wipe a table where they spray it and they wipe it super quick and they walk right back to the counter and they hang out with their friend. Other people spray it and then they wipe it and then they look at it from other angles and they make sure that they didn't. And then they notice, oh, down below there's a spoon that got dropped, and they pick that up. And then they realize, oh, the base of the table is dirty. Let me spray that too. And then they're down there and they realize, oh, the bottom of these chairs haven't been cleaned in like a month. Let me clean those. And then they're like, whoa, look at this table over here. The chairs aren't pushed in. Let me go. And literally they just go all night long. And I teach my kids, the workers that at my store, I say, guys, it's not about wiping a table, right? It's about being great at whatever you choose to do in your life. And this is the first step for a lot of you. This is job number one of you deciding that you want to do it at a really high level. And if you can get that into your mind, then you will succeed in life at whatever you choose to do. Because the truth is, I was talking about this with Amy Fast. I don't know if you listened to that episode, but
I
Amy
did, yeah.
Fast, yeah, and we were talking about when I used to say to my students, what are some careers that you can get rich at? And they would yell out doctor and lawyer and professional athlete, and they would, movie star. And I would say, no, you're wrong. See, the answer is be great at whatever profession you choose to do, and you can become rich. Literally, you're the best electrician, you will be rich. You're the best plumber in the world. Trust me, these rich people will find you and they'll be like, I'm going to pay that guy extra because he's that good and he's going to come work for me. You're a dietitian. I don't care what you are. If you are the best at it, you will be fine in life. And I think as long as we're sending that message, and that's the message that we on a daily basis, us teachers want kids to pursue. Same with the test, same with the quiz, same with homework assignments, whatever it is, whether you are the best or not is not the point. It's striving to be the best. That's the goal. And as long as we can do that, I used to tell kids all the time, trust me, if you do that, everything will work out for you in this world. I promise you it will. You might struggle and you might go through some hard times. You might not know what you want to do, and you might get confused as to certain things. You might try one thing and then do another thing, but be where you are when you're there and try to be the best at it. And if you do that, good things happen.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. And as a principal, I used to push a very, very strong message of, we're trying to help every kid to be college or career ready, right? And it wasn't only about college. College is a great option. I went to college, like you said, I have a doctorate, so I have a great belief and value for formal education. So I'm never going to say it's a bad thing, but that worked really well for me, right? I'm not going to say what works for me works well for everybody, right? We have some kids that are not going to go to college. They want to go to the military. I think that's a great path. I think some other kids, they want to go to a trade school. That's a great path. There's a variety of different ways to, create success in your life. And success is not always about a position. It's not always about money. It's about kind of what you talked about, being the best version of yourself wherever you're at, right? So I think, we've done a great job, I think, in our educational system. I think the last, 5, 10, maybe even 15 years of having career technical education options, whether it's automotive, coding, computer graphics, there's a lot of theater programs, art programs. There are a variety of different paths for students to go. And what I always wanted to do as a principal was create as many pathways on our campus. even pathways for kids who are struggling academically, pathways for athletes, pathways for kids that really wanted to focus strongly on academics and wanted to pursue their college life, pathways for kids that wanted to work with their hands and wanted to do automotive, they wanted to do, woodworking, whatever it might be. And then you allow the student to discover through trial and error, through taking a variety of courses, what they want to do. And I always thought that was the best path. I would never subscribe to the path of, and I think we were going down this area in education for a while where everybody has to go to a
Mhm.
university, and it's not the only method to be successful. Even though it's a great method for me, I really loved it when I went through again when I was at UCLA, and then I did went to USC for my doctorate. I loved it. I'm a naturally curious person. I read, even if I'm not in a program, I'm reading two, three, four books at a time. And when you talk about the mindset, the growth mindset, it was that book by, I believe it's Carol Dweck. It
Or
was called
Dweck.
Mindset.
Yeah.
So I'm always reading. So, I think that's what happens. Maybe if I'm guessing, a lot of us educators love the educational process. So I'm wondering if we unintentionally started pushing everybody into this area that we all love
Yeah.
because we know it works well for us, right? So we want other people to experience this great thing. But I guess for me, my self discovery is, well, this works well for me. It might not work the best for
Yeah.
Brian Mendler.
But it
Brian
didn't.
Mendler maybe needs something else. And look at you now. You're extremely
Right.
successful. You have a great, beautiful family, and you're enjoying your
Right.
best life.
I'm happy. Yeah, yeah. And look, I mean, school was the thing for me. It was there was no I remember as a kid, my parents were you're going to go to college. That's an important thing. But my grades, I mean, if I got it, but the truth is when I went to college, it was easier to get in. I mean, it was like if I got the grades in high school that I now that I got then, I would really struggle to get into most colleges. And I'm embarrassed to say this. I got 790 on my SATs combined, but I've never been a good test taker. I struggle under pressure. It's true in my life. I hate to say this because I wish I didn't struggle under pressure, but I mean, I guess if you put me up in front of a room and allow me to do my thing, I'm good. But like, I mean, golf, I'm a good golfer until you get people starting to watch on that first tee and like everybody's lined up and I'm like, all right, and my hands start sweating a little bit more and the anxiety starts to creep in and under pressure, I struggle. And anytime they would time me, anytime I felt like there was a rush on something or I was competing against a bunch of other kids that I knew were really smart, anytime that happened, I often would get in my own way. And I think that happens to some kids. And but what was really great for me about college was the first time that where I went to school where I realized that you could have a say in your learning. Like you could pick what you wanted to do. I've told the story on here a couple times about the first time that I ever took a public speaking course. I was in college. It was my freshman year, and I was a communications major, and I took whatever it was, public speaking 101, the first class of it, and I'll never forget it. It was raining really hard, and we had to do like whatever it was, a 10-minute speech on something. And I remember everybody got up before me and they were using notes and they had a podium and they were like nervous. And then it was my turn and I got up and I pushed the podium aside and I had no notes and I just went for like and I had literally every kid in the class hanging on my every word. And I sat down and I looked at the sky. I remember looking at the sky saying to myself, that's what it feels like to dominate in school. Like I never knew until that moment what it felt like to be the best one at something, by far the best one. And that was my brother a lot in school. It wasn't me. I was never the best student. I was never the best athlete. I was never the best musician. I tried in all those things, but I was never the best. And then I got there. I've told this, that's why a big reason I ended up going into teaching was I figured, well, I'm good up in front of people. What are some careers where I can do that? Never with the thought that I'd be in front of adults doing conferences, but thinking if I get in front of kids, I can use my God-given skill that I know I'm good at and that I love at the same time. And then to be able to develop that, by the way, as I've gone in my life, has been such a blessing with how technology has evolved and this ability to, I've told this too, that I always wanted to be a radio host. That was my goal as a little kid. I always dreamed of being a TV host or radio host, and I got denied from multiple radio jobs out of college, and now nobody can deny me. Right now I can set up a studio in my basement, and I can bring cool people on, and I can do what I want. And the truth about the world today is if people want to find me, they will, and they do. And that's the world that we live in today. There's no excuse anymore in this world. If you have YouTube, if you have a computer, you could figure anything out. It's just about patience and time and taking your time. What's one last leadership lesson that you want to leave people with? What's one last nugget of advice or thought or something that you got for people?
Oh boy, it's to me, there's a sign in my office. I used to have it always behind my desk, and it's in my desk now. And then it says, in the end, only kindness matters.
Hmm.
And I think sometimes we complicate things. We like you said, we get into instructional strategies and PBIS and PLCs and content, all these things, and all these things are wonderful. I'll never say anything bad about them. But sometimes in the midst of all that, and the principal making you upset, and your teacher colleague is not being nice to you today, and the students are yelling at you, and so on, we forget why we're even here. And to me, it's always about relationships, kindness, making a difference in our world. And then, and I'm not criticizing anybody else. I fall victim to this all the time in the busyness of everything. I forget sometimes, my why. So to me, it's always about kindness. It's always about elevating people and helping them to be the best versions of themselves. So I always, when I'm having a bad day, I go in my office, I look at that sign, and I start thinking and reflecting and centering myself. So I just would leave people with that kindness is huge. You can never go wrong by treating people to the best of your ability, and just being there for people as first and foremost as a human being. And it's kind of, how we started our conversation, right? Talking about the whole tragedy of Kobe Bryant. And the beauty of the whole, obviously it was a tragedy, but the beauty in how people reacted to it is look at how it brought people together,
Yeah, yeah,
different people of different cultures, different races, different whatever it might have been, and going to the memorials and connecting because it was a human being, it was a families, it was a tragedy, and just the kindness that was shown to all these, families that lost their loved ones.
yeah.
That's what I would say. Just the kindness and being there for other people.
And I think, just to touch on that, I think, you know, it's so easy to forget that. And you look at I was on Twitter this morning, and I saw our president said something, and then sometimes I just look at the comments just to see what, and look, whatever side of the aisle you're on, I don't really care. I don't talk about politics on there, but I don't believe in hate. Like I don't believe in calling people names. I don't care if I agree with someone or not. I think it's not the right approach to call people names and to, even if you disagree with them and you think they're bad and you think they're wrong, I think we just as a society have to be really, really careful of that. And I think all of us do it. And I think that sign, it's a great sign to have on your door. And it's a great reminder for kids sometimes that are struggling and aren't sure what to do in school and don't have a lot of friends, and just remind, hey, just be kind, man. Just be compassionate, be caring, think about other people, ask other people how they're doing. It's hard though, and it's something I know with my children that we focus on as parents, but it's still, and I think my kids have two really good parents, but still, they don't go out of their way usually to say, "Hey, how are you?" My daughter probably does a little more so than my son, but neither one of them are great at it, and it's always a reminder for me, "Hey, somebody's talking to you. Look at them real quick." And I think I have to remind myself that imagine my kids are not great at it and they have two parents that are constantly reminding them. Imagine how some of these kids are who have no parents and have had nobody ever reminding them that this is the appropriate way to be. And once I remember that, it makes it so much easier for me to do that. So listen, man, I appreciate this very much. You see how fast these hours go, don't they?
Oh, it flew by. I can talk to you for another 5, 6 hours,
It's funny because
man. So,
basically
but
everybody I bring on says that same thing, and I feel the same way. It's, that's why I love this show. And
yeah,
you text me the same thing, and everybody does. Usually when I invite guests to come on, they say, what are we going to talk about? And my answer was I don't know. Like
yeah.
I don't. I try to model my show after Joe Rogan. I don't know if you ever listen to
Oh
Joe
yeah.
Rogan.
Oh, he's the best.
He's the best, right? I'm a huge Joe Rogan fan, and I'm a huge mixed martial arts fan. So I love his mixed martial art podcast as well, which most people don't even know about. He's got his own mixed martial arts podcast, and then he's got his podcast that the
Okay.
general public listens to. But his rule on his show is there's no topics. Like we don't have topics. We just come on and we just hang out and we just talk. And if you can't talk to someone for 45 minutes, his rule is if you can't talk to me for 45 minutes, then I don't want you on my show. And like I've heard him say that, and I think my thoughts the same way. Like I'm bringing on people who care about kids. I know we have the same mindset. And so, you guys are my friends and I appreciate this very much, man. It was super fun. Thank you for everything that you're doing for kids. I'm going to be out there in March. So I don't know if you know this. I got two conferences coming out in mid-March out there in LA. I
Yeah.
got one in Anaheim and one in I don't know where it is. There's two of them, two
Rosemead.
back to
Yeah,
back.
I
Rosemead.
talked. Yeah, I talked to John. So I think he said you're gonna be here for 2, 3 days. And the Anaheim one, you're literally gonna be about 10 miles from my house. So let's get together.
So yeah, let's
Let
plan.
me know.
So the first night that I'm there, whatever night that is, I'll do my workshop in Rosemead, and then we'll get dinner that night. And because then the next
Okay.
day I got to fly out. So sound good?
Sounds good, man. And
All right, buddy.
I'm excited. Thank you. This was an honor, and I appreciate it.
Appreciate you, man. Take care. I'll see you soon.
Take care.